right, everyone. Get ready, because today we are going deep. A deep dive into the core of Laravel.
Absolutely.
So if you've ever wanted to build really powerful web applications and you've heard of Laravel, but you want to know, what are the essential pieces?
Yeah.
We are going to cover that today.
Yeah, today's like getting to that next level.
It is.
You know, you've dabbled, you've built some things, maybe you've even launched some things, but like, how do you really structure them well?
Exactly.
What are the good tools that are already there that we can use?
Yeah, what are those tools that separate the hobbyists from somebody who can really build something powerful?
Yes, absolutely.
So let's start with what we hear called the power trio of Laravel: Eloquent, routing, and middleware.
Yeah.
So Eloquent being the first one, what is that all about?
So imagine like you're building an application to manage a library.
Okay.
Right? And you've got all these books, you've got authors, you've got people checking them in and out. So you've got like all this data that you're interacting with, right? Right. And you need to be able to store it, retrieve it, update it.
Yeah.
That's where Eloquent comes in, right? So it's this system in Laravel that lets you interact with your database, but using like PHP code that makes sense, it's readable.
So it's not just like a bunch of SQL queries everywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't have to like litter your code with all these crazy queries.
Yeah, it just makes it cleaner and easier.
Yeah, exactly. And it also like helps prevent some security issues.
Right.
That you might run into if you're writing raw SQL.
Oh, very cool.
So yeah, Eloquent ORM, super, super useful.
So instead of me having to go learn a whole bunch more SQL, I can leverage the power of PHP that I already know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let's say you want to find all the books by a certain author.
Okay.
With like raw SQL, you'd have to write out this whole like select star from books where, you know, author equals. With Eloquent, you can just say like book and then like find by author. And it's just like way more readable, way easier to understand.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so Eloquent, that's how we manage the data, but then the application itself, you know, people going from page to page,
right?
You know, hitting these different API endpoints. How do we set all that up?
So that's where routing comes in.
Okay.
And, you know, like I was saying about that library example before, think of routing as like the blueprint to that library.
Okay.
Right? So you define, you know, when a user goes to this URL, they're going to see this page and it kind of maps everything out for you.
Oh, very good.
So it says, okay, when someone hits this route, this is the code, this is the controller, this is the function that's going to run, and this is the output that they should see.
Very cool.
So it really helps keep your application organized and easy to manage.
So do you say that the routing in Laravel is one of its strong suits? Because I know some other frameworks, the routing can be kind of a pain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Laravel's routing is like top notch. It's so flexible. You can do so much with it. Like you can have dynamic routes where, you know, the URL can change based on like an ID or something. You can group routes together. You can even create separate routes for your web pages and your API if you're building like a JavaScript front end or something like that.
Oh, very cool. So you can keep those like separate concerns.
Exactly.
Okay, awesome.
Really powerful.
Very cool. All right, so we've got the data handled, we've got the routing handled, but then let's say we want to add in some security or logging or something like that.
Yeah.
Where does middleware come into that picture?
Middleware is like one of my favorite things about Laravel, honestly, because it's so simple, but it's so powerful. So think of it like this. It's a way to run code before or after a request is handled by your application.
Okay.
So going back to our library example.
Yeah.
You know how like you have to go up to the front desk and like show your library card before you can go back and like actually look at books?
Right.
It's kind of like that. So you can use middleware to say like, hey, is this person logged in before they can access a certain page?
Okay.
Or you can use it to like log every single request that comes into your application so that if something goes wrong, you can go back and see what happened.
Okay, so like a debugging tool almost?
Yeah, or like you can use it to block certain IP addresses.
Okay.
So if you're getting like spammed or attacked or something like that, you can use middleware to kind of like shore up your defenses a little bit.
Very cool, very cool. So those are the three big ones. Eloquent for data, routing for how the application flows, and then middleware for kind of like this in-between layer.
Exactly.
That we can add all this extra functionality to.
Exactly, yeah.
Now let's talk about what the user actually sees. Blade?
Yeah, the front end?
Yes, the front end stuff. So what is Blade all about and how can we use it effectively?
So Blade is the templating engine in Laravel. And what that means is it lets you take like data from your application and like inject it into HTML. So you don't have to like write a bunch of complicated PHP inside your HTML. You can use Blade's like syntax to make it really clean and readable.
Yes.
And the key to using it effectively is to really embrace like organization and best practices.
Okay.
Just like with any kind of code, if you just start throwing stuff in there willy-nilly, it's going to get really messy really fast.
Right.
So some things to keep in mind are like breaking your templates down into smaller reusable components.
Okay.
So that you don't have a ton of repeated code. Using Blade's built-in directives, which are like little shortcuts for common tasks.
Okay.
And then just, commenting your code and just generally trying to keep things organized.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm like, man, this is a lot of information.
Yeah.
What are like 2 or 3 things I can take away to really implement these things well?
So I think the biggest takeaway is like Laravel is built to make your life easier as a developer.
Okay.
So take advantage of the tools that it gives you. Eloquent's there to make working with your database a breeze. Routing makes it super simple to map out your application. Middleware lets you add in all this extra functionality without cluttering up your code.
Yeah.
And Blade makes building beautiful front ends fun again.
Awesome. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to dive deep with us on Laravel.
Yeah, this was fun.
And hey, listeners out there, if you want to learn more, make sure to check out, maybe the Laravel documentation.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a good place to start.
It really is. They've got some really great documentation.
So until next time, we will see you on the next deep dive.